Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. Welcome to today's online class organized by National University. I hope you are keeping safe by the grace of Almighty. And I also hope that you will enjoy my today's class. I'm Shaz Dr. Asma, lecturer, Department of English, Government Tularam College, Naranganj. Today, I'm also going to talk about 17th and 18th century non-fictional prose, and particularly, I will focus on Edmund Burke's speech on the East India Company. So, today, particularly, I'm going to talk about Edmund Burke's presentation of India and the tyrannical rule of East India Company in India. Okay, so let's start our class. Before starting our class, we will talk about Edmund Burke a little bit in order to know him properly, because knowing a author's personal life helps readers to understand their writings. Although this is a space, but actually it can be considered a kind of political literature. Before starting my class, my main class, I would like to talk about Edmund Burke a little bit with you. Edmund Burke was born on 12th January 1729. Please focus on the birth year, because the birth year of an author tells something about the period he has written something. Okay, so we can understand that he belongs to 18th century and he was born in Dublin, Ireland. This is also important. He is an Irish person. I mean, he's from Ireland, so he's an Irish. And you know what are the similarities between Irish and any other colonized people? Irish people also fought against the misrule of England. Okay, they fought against the misrule of England. So for this region, they could connect themselves with the misery and sufferings of the colonized people. Here we see the same thing. Edmund Burke always raised his voice against the oppressions and torture on the colonized people and discrimination on the colonized people. He always talked, he was always a voice for the colonized people, and he tries to remove the misery and sufferings of colonized people. So, and his date of birth is 1797, July 9, 1797. And what was his profession? He was actually basically a statesman, but at the same time he was an author and an orator. You can clearly understand that he was a great orator by going through this space. Okay, he was remarkable for his eloquence, and he served in the British House of Commons. You know, there are two houses in the Parliament of the UK. So he served in the British House of Commons, and there he delivered this speech in the House of Commons of the UK of Britain, as a member of the Whig Party for many years. So he was a member of the Whig Party for many years. Whig Party was one of the political parties in Britain during that period of time. And what did he do? What did he contribute in the world of politics? We learn about this here. He is mainly praised for his support of the American colonies in the struggle against King George III that led to the American Revolution. He is mainly praised for his support of the American colonies in the struggle against I mean, he supported the colonized. Here, we can see that he supported the colonized people in their struggle or fight against King George III. King George III was the king of England that led to the American Revolution, and as a result, American Revolution took place, as well as for his strong opposition to the French Revolution. He held a strong opposition into the French Revolution. He also campaigned against the persecution of Catholics in Ireland. So, Catholics in Ireland were persecuted during his time, and he protested against this persecution and denounced the abuses and corruption of the East India Company. He also protested against the abuse, corruption, or misrule of the East India Company, which we will talk about in this class. Okay. So next, as in this class, in today's class, we are going to talk about the misrule of the East India Company. We need to learn something about the East India Company. So here, I'm going to talk about the East India Company in brief. Any company established in Western Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries to further trade with the East Indies following the discovery in 1498 of the Cape of Good Hope route by the Portuguese navigator Vasco da Gama is called East India Company. So, who is East India Company? East India Company, actually, East India Companies is a group of companies. Here, although we mention one company, but it is actually, they are actually a group of companies. There are more than one company here. So, after the discovery of the Cape of Good Hope route by Portuguese navigator Vasco da Gama. You have heard about Vasco da Gama, and this route was discovered in 1498, and this route led the different companies from Europe to India, okay, to India and other countries around India. Different countries, different business company of Europe used this route to reach India. And India at that time was full of resources. We will learn about this in our next slides. Park has described the resources, wealth, overall condition of India during that time in an excellent way in this space. So we'll talk about this in our next slide. So we can clearly understand that East India Company is that company from Western Europe, which during the 17th and 18th centuries came in India or in India or in the Indian subcontinent to do business. These companies got governmental support, and most notable companies were given charters by their respective governments, which provided them authority to acquire territory wherever they could and to exercise in the acquired territory various functions of government, including legislation, the issues of currency, the negotiation of treaties, engaging in war, and the administration of justice. Although initially, the East India Company was a company for business, but later they received charter or permission from their respective government to do some more business, some more administrative business in India, including legislation. I mean, they received the power to form law and to form law and the issues of currency. They began to issue currency. You know, this is the highest power in a country to form law or to issue currency, I mean to make money, to make issue currency in a country. This is the highest form of power, and that those power were given to the East India Company. The negotiation of treaties, you can, treaties means different kind of bond. Excuse me, I'm extremely sorry for the interruption. The negotiation of treaties. Treaties means bond between different groups engaging in war. The East India Company was engaged in war and the administration of justice. Okay, so they used to also employ law in order to provide justice to the people. So we can clearly see that indirectly they have began to control everything. All the powerful or highest rank of job in a country were governed by them gradually, and they were permitted by their respective countries to do that in India. So, and for after receiving those kind of power, they became tyrannical. They became to abuse the right of people. They began to snatch away the rights of the common people of this area. Next, we are going to talk about the major themes in the speech on the East India Bill. Okay, so Edmund Burke, we are now going to talk about the major themes in the speech on the East India Bill. Burke addresses the abuse of power of the East India Company in different territories of India, in different regions, in different areas of India conquered by the East India Company. So in this space, Burke talks about the abuse of power by the East India Company in different areas of India, which was conquered by the East India Company and later fully controlled by the East India Company. Second, Burke's advocacy for a reform proposal suggesting the reformation of East India Company initiated by the Fox Bills. A bill was, was presented named the Fox Bills in the House of Commons in order to reform the East India Company, because the East India Company started to misuse of their power in different areas of India. So the reformers or the people or the member in the House of Commons tried to establish a bill by which they can control the power of the East India Company, and by which they can restrain the abuse of power by the East India Company. Although I'm talking about this in advance, although this bill later was not passed in the House of Commons because of the objection or opposition of the royal or of the throne of the king. A passionate attack by Burke on the autocratic rule of the British government in India. Here, Burke also attacked the autocratic rule of the British government in India. So the British government at that moment began to be very controlling in India. After conquering the India, the British government tried to impose its own kind of rules on the people of India in order to control the people, the rights of people in India. So here, Burke also passionately attacked this motive. Burke addresses the objection raised by the opponents of the bill in a persuasive and argumentative manner. When the Fox bill was presented in the House of Commons, some protesters, some opposition some protesters or some people who did not support, some member of the House of Commons who did not support this bill. They protested or raised objection against this bill. So Burke gives delivered this space in order to address the objection and in order to pursue them, in order to convince them that this Fox bill is important to reform the East India Company. And here he talks in a persuasive and argumentative manner. So my dear students, I think that you have understand what Burke tries to say in this speech from the theme. Another thing which Burke tries to do here is Burke's concern and defense of the politically oppressed people in India and his idea of imperial government. So here Burke tried to defend politically oppressed people in India and his idea of imperial government. I mean, both the government, he tried to defend, try to protect the rights of the abused people, abused Indian people, and at the same time, he also talks about imperial government. I mean, what kind of imperial government is the best for securing the rights of people, for the benefits of people. He also talks about this in this space. So the ultimate objective of the speech is to win political support for the Fox bill. So what was the purpose of the speech of the East India Bill? You can clearly understand, you know, that this is a speech delivered by Edmund Burke in the House of Commons. And the purpose behind presenting or delivering this speech was to win political support for the Fox bill. In order to pass a bill in the parliament of any country, the bill needs to get support, majority support from the members. So our Burke delivers this speech in order to get that required support from the members of the House of Commons. So I hope that you have understand the themes or the main main theme of the speech and the purpose of Edmund Burke behind delivering this speech. Okay, so here next I'm going to talk about how Burke presented East India Company's misrule or abuse of power in India. We have already learned that, and we know because we have studied all these things in our history book and I know you have also studied about East India Company during your secondary and higher secondary education, that East India Company was a tyrannical company who tortured the people of India a lot. So here Burke presented it with excellent words in an excellent way, the misrule or the abuse of power of East India Company in India. Okay, so see what does Burke say first. Burke presents East India Company as a trade agency with considerable political background. So we can clearly understand, we know it, we already know that East India Company was a company for business, but later it becomes a political institution, and it became a political institution and it began to rule the whole India. So here our Burke says the same thing, that East India Company was a trade company, was a business company, but it had political power too, and which for its own benefit. And what did East India Company do? East India Company used that political power for its own benefit, set up a government based on bribery that ruled every aspect of Indians' lives. So East India Company in India set up or formed a government which was based on bribery. I mean, their their decision, their I mean use of law would be changed by bribery. Okay, they were corrupted, and they began to rule every aspect of Indians' lives. So you can understand that as the government itself was corrupted, it caused severe a severe misery in the lives of common Indian people. Second, its rule had become as corrupt as its business dealings. So here we get a hint that East India Company's business procedure was corrupted. Business dealings were corrupted. So in the same way as it is common that its rule would be also corrupted. So here our Bark clearly says that East India Company's rule in India was corrupted. It was based on bribery, and its officers showed themselves tyrannical in India. So its officers were tyrannical, torturer. They abused power for their own benefit, and they used law according to their own will. The result was frequently large-scale destruction and slaughter. So what was the output of the rule of East India Company? It caused mass destruction and killing, murder or slaughter in India. So as said by Burke, what Burke said that the whole nation, I mean the whole nation here he means India, with inconsiderable exceptions was slaughtered or banished. Banished means exiled. Okay. The country was laid waste with fire and sword. So we can clearly understand, we can here get an image of destruction, mass destruction. And that land, distinguished above most others by the cheerful face of paternal government and protected labor, the chosen seat of cultivation and planting is now almost throughout a dreary desert covered with rushes and briars and jungles full of wild beasts. So here our Burke draws a comparison between the past India and before the rule of East India Company and India after the rule of East India Company. So here he wants to say that before the rule of East India Company, India was full of happiness, cheerfulness. But after the rule of East India Company, India became a land, a wasteland. There is, we here get a dreary image of India under the rule of East India Company. So this is a dreadful description, a horrible description of India under the East India Company rule. So here, in order to present the misrule of East India Company in India, Burke successfully draws a comparison between the previous India before the rule of East India Company and the then present India under the rule of East India Company. Next, here also we are going to talk about the misrule or tyrannical rule of East India Company in India. Here Burke says that the East India Company uses frauds. I mean, they were not honest, they were frauds and evasion as guiding principles for ruling India. They evaded India. They occupy India without law. In an unlawful way, they occupied different areas, many areas of India. And they were frauds, they were not honest. In the following lines, Burke presents it in front of the audience clearly. In his words, in the words of Burke, here we can get a clear picture of India under the rule of East India Company. The authority of the regular and lawful government is everywhere and in every point extinguished. So there was not the rule of law. There was not the regular and lawful government in India during the rule of East India Company. Disorders and violence arise. So we can see the anarchy in India under the rule of East India Company. They are repressed by other disorders and other violence. So the whole India was full of disorders, anarchy, and violence under the rule of East India Company. Next, he says that during the rule of the company, India as a nation was turned into a grand waste. I mean, it turned into a wasteland. India, once prosperous, once full of resources, wealth, turned into a wasteland. And even the benevolence of the Indian native rulers during the British rule was replaced by fraud, mismanagement, corruption, or misrepresentation of the East India Company. So, you know, different provinces, different areas of India were ruled by separate rulers. For example, Bengal was ruled, the West Bengal or the Bengal was ruled by a ruler. The Odisha was ruled by another ruler. The Punjab was ruled by another ruler. But even the native rulers under the rule of British East India Company, the native rulers became tyrannical, fraud, and they were full of corrupt. They were also corrupted. So we can clearly understand that there was a kind of moral degeneration or moral degradation during the rule of East India Company in India. Even the common people, even the native ruler became morally degraded during the rule of East India Company in India. So here our Burke presents India in his space. So here we will get a picture of India before the rule of East India Company. And Burke is here presents India in a very positive way. So let's see how Burke presents India in this space. Burke presents graphic details of India, including its history, geography, territorial vastness, culture, ethnicity, etc. So, Burke presents India in front of the members of the House of Commons in Britain in details. He presents the history, geography, territorial vastness, culture, ethnicity, everything of India in front of the members of House of Commons, so that the purpose behind this was that the members of the House of Commons could get a clear picture of India before the rule of East India Company. The purpose of Burke was to show what kind of country India had turned into after the rule of East India Company. He believed that 18th century India had declined sadly from the height of Mughal power. So our Burke believed that during the reign of Mughal emperors, India was at the height of supremacy, but during the 18th century, India had declined from that height of supremacy. Okay, but still he compares the then rulers of different states of India to the kings, electors, princes, dukes, and other ruling nobility of contemporary Germany. So later, what did our Burke do? Burke presented the different rulers of different states of India and compared the native rulers of India to the kings, princes, dukes, and other noble men of the contemporary Germany. Okay, he said that they are on the same status of the uh, kings and princes of the Germany. Geographically, he later said that geographically the then Indian subcontinent or different states of India have been compared with different countries of contemporary Europe. So later Burke compared different states or different areas of India with the different countries of Europe. Here Burke intended to show the vastness of India, the vastness of Indian subcontinent. For this reason, he compared different states of the Indian subcontinent to different countries of contemporary Europe. He made this comparison in order to make his audience grasp the vastness of India. What I said earlier, that here Burke wanted to present the vastness of India in front of the members of the House of Commons. Okay, so he also presents the plight means misery of Indian people under the rule of company. Later, in the next part of his speech, he also presented the misery, the miserable condition of Indian people under the rule of East India Company. As he says, through all that vast extent of country, there is not a man who eats a mouthful of rice but by permission of the East India Company. So here Burke clearly said that the Indian people were starving during the rule of East India Company. They did not get food to eat. So later he says that in here Burke says that India as a nation had declined from its past glory and dignity during the rule of the company. So during the rule of company, India declined from its past glory and dignity because because of the corruption of East India Company or because of the misrule of East India Company, India had degraded from its status or from its past glory. India was presented as a land inhabited by 30 millions of souls, and as a nation which was once culturally, economically, commercially, ethically rich and affluent. So here also our our Burke represented India as a land which was inhabited by 30 millions of souls. 30 millions of souls means 30 millions of Indian people. And he wanted to say that this 30 million of Indian people had a soul. Okay, and as a nation, this India as a nation was culturally, ethnically, economically, commercially, in every way rich and affluent. You know, it was the target of the colonizers to spread in front of the outer world, in front of the common people of Europe, that the colonized people were uncivilized, uncultured, uneducated, and they need to be educated, they need to be cultured and civilized. And this job of making the colonized people civilized, cultured, and educated can only be done by the colonizers. So colonizers always try to justify and their mischievous rule, their misrule in the colonies, in different colonies of Africa and India. So they spread these ideas, these thoughts that the colonized people, the native people of different colonies were uncivilized, uneducated. So here our Burke clearly said that these Indian people were ethnically, culturally, economically, commercially, in every way were rich and affluent. So for this reason, India was rich and affluent, but it was only the rule of East India Company which for which India had degraded from its past glory. He says that later Burke says that the population of India was rich with all possible diversification. I mean, it was in every way diverse by manners, by religion, by hereditary employment. In every way, the people of India were diverse. Burke, with his narrative skill combined with factual details, was successful to convince his audience that India in reality is bleeding under the rule of the East India Company. So this was the purpose of our Burke, to prove in front of the members of the House of Commons that India was once rich in wealth, culture, in every way, but now it is declining, it is suffering under the rule of East India Company. It is bleeding under the rule of East India Company. So in order to prove that India was once rich and affluent in culture, in commerce, in wealth, in every way, he uses factual details from about India. He presents different details. Factual details are about its population, about its commerce, about its culture, about everything, and he also used his narrative skill, okay, his eloquence, in order to prove that India um, was once a prosperous country, was a prosperous nation, was a civilized, cultured, a rich nation, but now it is declining, or it is bleeding under the rule of the East India Company. So next I'm going to discuss about some question. First, narrate Burke's representation of the tyrannical rule of East India Company in this space. So here in this space, Burke presents the tyrannical rule of East India Company. So you will read the essay, or if you watch this class carefully, you will understand the abuse or tyrannical rule of East India Company in India. So write down or make an outline of the answer of this question, or this question could be given in this way: discuss Burke's presentation of East India Company in this essay. And another question is, what was the purpose of Burke behind delivering this speech? So what was the purpose of Burke behind delivering this speech? So my dear students, I hope that you have enjoyed this class and you will be benefited from this class. I again suggest you to focus on your study and to take preparation for your examination. See you in my next class, and till then, take care. Allah Hafiz.